I'm not sure if there's a name for the kind of heartbreak that comes from realizing you were never really seen by the person you tried the hardest to take care of. But I felt it, deep in my gut, like an anchor dropped without warning. My name's Jenna. I'm 34 and I work as a software engineer in Denver. I bought a house for my mom last year. Nothing fancy, just a 2-story fixer-upper in an older neighborhood with enough light and space for both of us. She'd been living in a cramped apartment since my dad passed away, and after a surprise bonus from my company's IPO, it felt like the right thing to do. She cried when I handed her the keys, said I was the only real family she had left. That sentence hasn't aged well. It started with the mailbox. I got home from work one Tuesday and noticed the nameplate had been replaced. It used to read J. Morgan, just a small nod to the fact that it was my house. But now it said the Morgan family, which felt off. But I figured maybe she'd asked the neighbor's kid to repaint it. I didn't want to make a big deal. The next morning, a landscaping crew showed up, without warning. I watched them dig up the backyard I'd spent 2 weekends planting with my own hands. Lavender, rosemary, the peach tree my mom said reminded her of her childhood home. They tore it all out and put in turf. Turf. When I confronted her, she smiled and said, "Oh, sweetie, you're always so busy. I didn't want to bother you with little details." I should have known that was just the beginning. 3 days later, I walked in on a total stranger standing in our living room with a measuring tape, snapping photos of the windows and sketching in a little notebook. When I asked who she was, she blinked and said, "I'm Jordan's aunt. We're prepping for the party." I stared at her. "Who's Jordan?" She laughed. "You must be joking." I wasn't. That night, over dinner, I asked my mom directly. She poured herself a glass of wine and said it as casually as if she were commenting on the weather. "Jordan's my son, Jenna. He's coming to live with us." I blinked. "Your son?" She sighed, as if I was the one being dramatic. "I had him before I met your father. I gave him up for a while, but we reconnected after your dad passed. It's time to be a real family again." I couldn't speak. Not because she'd kept a secret like that for my entire life, though that was bad enough, but because she said it with such warmth. That tone she never used for me, like he was the one she'd been waiting for all along. I asked why she hadn't told me sooner. She gave me that tired smile and said, "You're strong, Jenna. You don't need anyone. Jordan, he's been through a lot. We need to show him what a loving home looks like." It hit me in the chest. She wasn't just welcoming him in, she was replacing me, rewriting the story of who mattered most. That weekend, I found a printed invitation on the kitchen counter. Celebrating Jordan's homecoming, a family brunch at the Morgan residence. My name wasn't on it. I wasn't even listed as a host. When I asked her about it, she waved me off like I was making a scene. "We're one family now," she said. "The house belongs to all of us." I reminded her, gently, firmly, that the house was in my name, that I paid for it, that I brought her here so we could both heal. She stared at me for a long moment before saying, "Well, maybe it's time you learned that money doesn't buy family." I thought I'd misheard, but I hadn't. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I just nodded and walked out of the room. I needed space, clarity, a plan. But later that night, I walked past what used to be my office and saw the door slightly ajar. The lights were on, furniture gone, my books packed in boxes. Inside, Jordan was setting up his gaming PC on my old desk like he owned the place. I stood there in the hallway, frozen. Jordan hadn't seen me yet. He had his back to the door, headphones around his neck, humming while rearranging my bookshelves like they were his. He'd already moved in. Just like that. I cleared my throat. He turned, startled for half a second, then smiled. "Oh, hey, you must be Jenna. I was wondering when we'd meet." Not hi. Not thanks for letting me crash. Not even an ounce of awareness that he was standing in a room that still smelled like my candle collection. Just a casual assumption that this was his place now. I didn't say anything. Just closed the door and walked away, my legs moving on autopilot. I went out to the porch and sat down, wrapping my cardigan tighter around myself even though it wasn't cold. I must have sat there for an hour, maybe more, trying to make sense of what the hell was happening. This house, the one I bought after years of working 12-hour days, living on ramen and caffeine, taking freelance gigs on top of my full-time job. This was supposed to be a fresh start for me and my mom. After Dad died, I thought she needed me. I thought we'd heal together. Instead, she invited someone else to take up the space I had carved out for us. For her? And worst of all, she didn't even think I deserved a heads up. That night, I stayed in my room. I heard them laughing downstairs, the kind of laughter that used to come out of her when she talked to me about silly little things like paint colors or baking fails. Around 11 p.m., I heard footsteps in the hall, then a knock on my door. "Jenna?" It was Mom. I didn't answer. She opened the door anyway. "You didn't say goodnight," she said, like we were still living in some sitcom family fantasy. "I didn't have anything to say," I replied. She sighed and sat on the edge of my bed without asking. "I know this is sudden, but Jordan needs this. He's been through a lot. His ex-wife took everything in the divorce." I blinked. "So now he gets my space too?" She frowned like I was the unreasonable one. "Don't be like that. He's family." I laughed. Dry, sharp. "You've known him for what? A year? You've known me my whole life and you still treat me like a guest." Her face hardened. "You're overreacting. You always get sensitive when you're stressed. You need to let go of this selfishness. It's just a room." Just a room. The room where I'd worked on my first product launch. Where I cried after losing my best friend. Where I built myself back up. She left without saying goodnight. The next morning, I found my locked drawer open. It was where I kept important documents. Stuff like my deed, backup tax files, contracts from my side business. I never gave anyone the key. It had been forced open, the lock broken. Inside, a few papers were missing. When I confronted Mom, she didn't even deny it. "I was just helping Jordan get some paperwork ready," she said. "He might be added to the property later. It'll be easier if everything's in order." I couldn't breathe. "You what?" My voice cracked. "He needs stability, Jenna," she said, as if that excused everything. "And let's be honest, you're never even here. You work all the time. What's the point of owning a house you don't enjoy?" I walked out. Drove around for hours, tears burning my eyes. I ended up at a diner across town, the kind with sticky menus and bad coffee, and just sat there, staring at my phone. I texted my best friend, Kay, me. They broke into my drawer, took my house documents. She's talking about putting him on the deed. Kay, call your lawyer, tonight. I didn't have a lawyer, but I knew someone who did. That night, while Mom and Jordan were busy redecorating, I logged into our shared Wi-Fi and checked the smart cam I'd installed at the front door when we moved in. I'd never needed the indoor ones. I trusted her, but I had footage, time-stamped, including the moment Jordan carried my filing box out to the garage, looked around and laughed. I wish I could say I packed a bag and walked out that night. But the truth is, I stayed. Not because I forgave them. Not because I didn't know what was happening. But because I needed to see how far they'd go. Spoiler, a lot farther than I ever imagined. The next morning, I acted like nothing had happened. I made coffee. I smiled when Jordan walked into the kitchen, shirtless like it was his damn Airbnb. He poured himself the last of the oat milk, mine, obviously, then winked at me like we were in on some joke together. "Big day," he said, leaning on the counter. "Mom said you were cool with the redesign plans." "Redesign." I blinked. "What redesign?" He chuckled. "The living room. We're knocking out the wall between it and the den. Open concept. Better flow." I nearly dropped my mug. "You're remodeling my house?" He didn't even flinch. "Our house, right?" I looked at my mom. She was stirring her tea, deliberately avoiding eye contact. "You agreed to this?" I asked her, my voice tight. "I thought it would be a nice change," she said lightly, And Jordan has such good taste. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The wall they were planning to knock down? I'd had it hand-textured by a local artist during the renovation. It was the first real splurge I'd ever allowed myself. I used to sit in that den on Sunday mornings, coffee in hand, sunlight pouring in through the windows. It was mine. And now they were planning to bulldoze it, for flow. I spent that day at work barely able to focus. Every time my phone buzzed, I flinched, half expecting to see a photo of my living room mid-demo. I knew I had to act, but I didn't want to confront them yet. I needed leverage, something they couldn't gaslight or talk their way out of. So that night, after they went to bed, I opened Jordan's laptop. I know how it sounds, but this wasn't curiosity. It was survival. He left it on the kitchen island, unlocked. Emails still open. He'd been messaging a notary and a real estate agent. One thread made my heart stop. A draft contract. Transfer of joint ownership, with my address on it and my name typed in, as if I'd already agreed. I scrolled further. He had a list of renovations down to budget lines, paint swatches, timeline. A comment. Need Jenna out by Q2. Outside, by the second quarter, I printed everything, every email, every PDF. I took photos with timestamps. I sent a backup to my friend Kay with instructions. If anything happens, send this to a lawyer. The next morning, I told my boss I needed a few personal days. She didn't ask why, just nodded and said, "Take care of yourself." I didn't realize how much I needed to hear that. I drove 2 hours out of the city to a small cabin Airbnb and checked in under a fake name. I didn't even tell Kay where I was. I just needed to think without feeling like I was being watched in my own home. That night, I got a call from an unknown number. "Hi, is this Jenna Morgan?" A woman's voice asked. "Yes." "This is Alyssa from Ridgeview Realty. I just wanted to confirm your walkthrough next week for the interior evaluation. Jordan said you'd be meeting us at the property?" I nearly dropped the phone. "Actually," I said, "Jordan doesn't own that property." "I do, and there will be no walkthrough." There was a long pause. "Oh, that's not what we were told." "I'll be sending legal documents to your office," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "And you can consider this your formal notice to cease any involvement with that address." I hung up. Then I stared at the wall for a solid 10 minutes, shaking. The next day, I drove back into the city. I didn't go home. I went straight to a law office Kay had recommended. A woman named Talia met me in a private room. I handed her the stack of evidence. She scanned it silently, nodding. Then she looked up. "Do you have your original purchase contract?" "Yes." "And the title's still under your name?" "Only mine." "Good," she said. "Then let's remind them what that means. The thing no one tells you about betrayal, real betrayal, the kind that wears your mother's perfume and drinks coffee in your favorite mug, is that it doesn't break you all at once. It chips away piece by piece until one day you wake up and realize you're not in your life anymore. You're just watching other people use it. But not anymore." After meeting with Talia, my lawyer, I didn't go straight home. I stopped by a little office on the edge of town, an agency I'd passed 100 times but never walked into until that day. A rental management company. I handed them the listing packet I'd pulled together overnight. Photos, measurements, rental comps. My house, my damn house, was going up for lease. And I wasn't going to say a word. The next few days were a blur of quiet execution. I rerouted the mail, forwarded packages, booked a moving company under Kay's name. I packed everything that mattered to me and drove it to a storage unit across town. Every box labeled, organized, locked. Inside the house, I said nothing. I smiled when Jordan talked about paint samples. I nodded when Mom asked if I'd be out on Friday, so the real estate photographer could come by to shoot the space for design inspiration. "Sure," I told her. "Take all the time you need." I wanted them comfortable, arrogant, distracted. Then, Thursday morning, I left a small envelope on the kitchen table. Inside was a short note. Don't forget to open the front gate for the crew. They'll need access to all rooms. That afternoon, they welcomed in 3 men with cameras and measuring tools. What they didn't know? They weren't interior photographers. They were the property manager's inspection team. The property went live that night on 4 different rental platforms. I paid extra for boosted listings. By morning, I had 12 inquiries, 2 serious applications. I picked the one with the cleanest background check and the earliest move-in date, next week. I signed the lease, sent it to Talia for safekeeping. Then I changed the locks, updated the security codes, and disabled Mom's emergency key access from her phone. I also bought a tiny doorbell camera, just in case. The final step? I moved out. Quietly, without fanfare. Just one last load of clothes, the rest of my files, and my favorite coffee mug. I didn't say goodbye. That weekend, I stayed at Kay's place, waiting, watching. Sunday, 11:42 a.m., I got the first text from Mom. Mom, did you take the mirror from the upstairs hallway? It's gone. Then Jordan, WTF. The Wi-Fi's down. Did you change the router or something? And finally, Mom, why is there a lockbox on the front door? I didn't reply. I waited until 3 p.m., the time they were supposed to meet a potential designer for Jordan's dream open concept remodel. Instead, they were greeted by Maria and James, a married couple with 2 kids and a confirmed lease agreement, holding keys and a copy of the contract. They called me 6 times. I didn't answer. At 3:17 p.m., I got a voicemail from Mom. Her voice was shaking. Jenna, what is going on? These people say they're moving in. They showed me a lease. You can't rent this house. This is our home. What are we supposed to do now? I played it twice, then saved it to a folder labeled Receipts. That night, I sent one final email to both of them. Dear Mom and Jordan, as of today, I no longer reside at 1455 Elmhurst. The new tenants have full legal right to occupy the property. Any personal items remaining in the home will be considered abandoned after 72 hours, as per state law. You wanted a fresh start. Now you have one. Somewhere else. Jenna. Kay was sitting beside me when I hit send. She raised her glass of red wine, eyes wide. You really did it. I nodded. And they still don't know the best part. She grinned. Tell me. I pulled up my phone and showed her the receipt. A cash offer, full price, for the house, from the tenants. They weren't just leasing, they were buying. The morning of the final walkthrough, I sat across the street in my car, coffee in one hand, my phone in the other. A for sale sign stood proudly in the front yard. Bold, bright red sold sticker slapped across the top. A small, fierce part of me wanted to get out and take a picture with it. But I didn't need proof. I had everything I needed. At 9:03 a.m., I watched as Jordan pulled up in his oversized truck, blasting music like he owned the block. He hopped out, saw the sign, and just stood there. For a second, he looked like a kid who'd wandered too far from home and just realized no one was looking for him. Then Mom arrived. She barely got the car into park before she was out, heels clicking across the driveway, muttering into her phone. When she reached the door, she punched in the old code. It didn't work. She tried again. Still locked. She knocked, loud and angry. The new owner opened the door. Calm, kind, polite. Just like I'd hoped. We're here for the family meeting. My mother said stiffly, clearly assuming the couple had rented the place by mistake. I think there's been some confusion. The woman replied, handing her a copy of the deed. We closed on this property 2 days ago. It belongs to us now. Mom's face went white. Jordan tried to bluster his way in, but the husband stepped forward. Sir, you're trespassing. We've already informed our lawyer there might be disturbances. We have security footage. Jordan's hand twitched toward the door frame, like he thought about forcing his way inside. That's when the police car rolled up. Not by accident. I'd called in a civil standby request that morning, just to be safe. The officer stepped out and addressed my mom like they were old acquaintances, which, in a small city like ours, wasn't far off. "Ma'am," he said, "we've been notified that this is now private property. If you have belongings inside, the new owners have agreed to let you schedule a pickup time, but you can't be here uninvited." "I raised my daughter in that house," she snapped. "No," I whispered to myself, watching from across the street. "You used her." They left 10 minutes later. Mom's mascara smudged from tears. She would never let herself cry in public. Jordan peeled out of the driveway like he thought tire marks were some kind of revenge. They never once looked back. Later that week, I dropped the keys from the storage unit into my new landlord's hand. My new home. A modest walk-up with ugly kitchen tiles and creaky stairs, but it was mine. No ghosts, no gaslighting, no Jordan. Just space. Real space. Kay came over that night with takeout and a bottle of red. We sat on the floor, eating lo mein out of the container, laughing harder than we had in months. She toasted me. To peace. I clinked my cup against hers. To privacy. The next morning, I opened my inbox to an email from Talia. Subject line: Update. Attempted fraud report. Apparently, Jordan had tried to push a fake quitclaim deed through a shady broker to get added to the title, after I'd already sold the house. The broker flagged it. There could be charges. I forwarded the file to a folder called Don't Ever Forget. A week later, I got one last voicemail from Mom. Her voice was cold, controlled. "You've embarrassed this family, destroyed our unity. When you're done playing victim, maybe you'll understand what you cost us." I didn't respond, not because I was ignoring her, but because there was nothing left to say. That door was closed, locked, and for once in my life, I was on the right side of it. Looking back, I think the most painful part wasn't losing the house. It was realizing I never had a place in their version of family unless I was useful, quiet, and invisible. But this, choosing myself, walking away, that was the loudest thing I've ever done. If you've ever been through something like this, had your space taken, your boundaries ignored, your voice drowned out, I'd love to hear your story. Drop it in the comments. And if you want to stick around, hit subscribe. There's more where this came from. Thanks for listening. I mean that. Really.